I had exactly $214 in my checking account the morning my father knocked on my office door. Not the kind of broke where you're scraping by. The kind of broke where you've been scraping by for so long you've stopped noticing the scrape. The kind that becomes the background noise of your entire adult life. $214, 3 weeks after my wedding, for months after my mother posted 46 photos of my sister's baby shower on Facebook and didn't text me once on the day I got married. He was holding a manila envelope. Thick. Rubber banded. He was wearing his good shoes, which told me this wasn't a casual visit. My father only wore his good shoes when he wanted something. There was a document inside that envelope. I didn't know it yet, but that document was the beginning of the end for both of them. I almost signed it. I almost signed away $438,000 because I was tired and grieving and still, after 36 years, still hoping that maybe this time they'd finally see me. They didn't. But I did. Let me take you back. My name is Diane Calloway. I'm 36 years old. I'm a licensed structural engineer at a mid-sized civil firm in Columbus, Ohio. I run half marathons when the weather cooperates. I keep a sourdough starter I've named Gerald, and for the better part of my adult life, I have been the daughter my parents mentioned second. Not with cruelty. That's the part people don't understand. There was no dramatic villain speech. No locked room, no bruises. Just the quiet, consistent, decade after decade pattern of being the child who was expected to need less. My sister's name is Renata. She's 32. She has my mother's coloring and my father's charm, and she has always, always, always come first. Not because she's smarter. Not because she worked harder. Because from the moment she arrived in our family, she fit the picture my parents had already painted of who their child was supposed to be. And I was the one who'd already been there, not quite right, not quite the vision, rearranged to make room. I want to be precise about this, because I'm an engineer by training and I believe in precision. What happened in my family wasn't abuse. It was allocation. My parents allocated their attention, their resources, their presence, the way someone allocates a budget with a favorite line item and a rounding error. Renata was the line item. I was the rounding error. The first time I understood this, I was 9 years old. My parents owned a small hardware business in Westerville. They'd built it together over 15 years, Callaway Home Supply, 3 employees, 1 loading dock, a reputation for knowing every contractor in the county by first name. By the time I was in middle school, it was worth somewhere around $600,000, which in Westerville, Ohio in the late 90s was real money. My grandmother on my father's side was named Eleanor Calloway. Gran Eleanor. She wore her silver hair in a French twist, and she smelled like talcum powder and cedar, and she was, without question, the only adult in my childhood who saw me the way I actually was. She died in November of 2003, when I was 15. She left a will. I wasn't old enough to understand wills then. I knew she'd left some things to my parents, the house in Dublin, some furniture, her jewelry. I knew there was a trust involved, because I'd heard my father say the word trust on the phone once, his voice low in the way that meant the conversation was not for me. What I didn't know, what I would not know for 21 more years, was that Gran Eleanor had established a separate education trust for me. Specifically for me. In my name. $250,000 placed in a custodial investment account in 2001, 2 years before she died. She'd been planning it for years. The account had a named custodian, my father, and a named beneficiary, me. I didn't know any of this when I graduated high school in 2007. I didn't know it when I applied for student loans to fund my engineering degree at Ohio State. I didn't know it when I worked 22 hours a week at a campus copy center to cover rent on an apartment I shared with 3 other women. I didn't know it when I graduated in 2011 with honors and $64,000 in federal student debt. I didn't know it when I was accepted to a structural engineering graduate program at Case Western and took out an additional $31,000 in loans to attend. I didn't know it when, in 2015, I made my first $400 monthly payment on that debt and kept making it every single month for 9 years. I didn't know it until the morning my father walked into my office with that envelope and asked me to sign a document releasing the estate of Eleanor Calloway from further obligation. He had no idea I'd already been talking to a forensic accountant for 6 days. I need to back up a little more, because the wedding matters. The wedding is where everything started moving. Marcus and I got engaged in March of 2024. We'd been together for 4 years. He's a high school history teacher, patient, funny, the kind of man who fixes things around the house not because I can't, but because he finds it satisfying and wants to help. He met my parents twice before the engagement. Both times, my mother spent most of dinner asking Renata about her renovation project. We set the date for October 12th, 2024. Small ceremony, 80 guests, a restored event space in the short north neighborhood of Columbus. We sent invitations in June. Formal, printed, inner and outer envelopes, the whole thing. My mother called the week they arrived. "Oh, Diane, it's beautiful. We'll be there." She sounded warm. I want to be fair. She sounded genuinely warm. 6 weeks before the wedding, in late August, Renata announced she was pregnant. Her second. The first, my nephew Cooper, was 2. This announcement triggered a full family mobilization I'm not sure I have the vocabulary to describe accurately. My mother flew to Scottsdale, where Renata and her husband Derek live, within 4 days of the announcement. She stayed for 12 days. She posted about it continuously. "Baby number 2 on the way. Our family is growing. So blessed." My father drove to the airport to pick her up when she got back and brought her flowers. I found out Renata was pregnant from Facebook. 2 weeks before my wedding, my mother called again. "Diane, I need to talk to you about something. Renata has been having some complications. Nothing serious, but she's been told to rest and she's anxious and she really needs support right now. She needs us. Mom, my wedding is in 2 weeks." "I know, sweetheart. And you are so capable and you have Marcus and his whole wonderful family. Renata doesn't have anyone out there with her except Derek and his parents, who we don't really know. We feel like we should be there." There was a silence. I had practiced for this silence. I had imagined this exact phone call so many times that I had written down what I would say on a notepad by my kitchen phone like I was preparing for a deposition. "Mom," I said it quietly, "I need you to hear me say this. If you don't come to my wedding, I will not pretend that's okay. I won't make it easier for you. I won't absorb it. I need you there." She was quiet for a moment. "Diane, you're asking me to choose between my daughters. You already chose. I just need you to be honest about it." She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "We'll send a beautiful gift." I hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for 40 minutes. I did not cry. I was past the stage where I cried about my parents. I was in a stage where I kept very thorough mental records. I called Marcus. I told him. He was quiet for a moment in the way he gets when he's measuring his words carefully. Then he said, "Their loss is catastrophic and they don't know it yet. Let's get married." We did. October 12th, 2024. The short north. 82 people. 2 seats front row, left side, aisle, remained empty the entire ceremony. I had not removed them from the arrangement because I wanted every single person in that room to see the shape of the absence. Marcus's mother walked me down the aisle. Her name is Loretta Beaumont, and she wore a dusty rose dress and pearl earrings, and she squeezed my arm right before we reached the doors and whispered, "I've wanted a daughter for 30 years, and I want it to be you." I held it together until the vows. The officiant was our friend Pauline, a federal public defender who moonlights as a notary and had gotten ordained online specifically for our wedding. When she said the part about chosen family and the courage it takes to build what you never had, I had to stop and breathe. Marcus was crying. He doesn't cry easily. Seeing him cry made me cry. 82 people saw those empty seats. No one mentioned them out loud. They didn't have to. The reception was everything I'd imagined. We danced until 11. Marcus's Aunt Ruth did the wobble so enthusiastically she lost a heel. Pauline gave a toast that made the room laugh, and then go completely silent, and then applaud. At 9:30, my friend Deja, who'd been my college roommate and had once helped me carry a futon up 4 flights of stairs, pulled me outside for a minute and said, "They don't deserve to be in that room anyway." "I know," I said. "I know you know," she said. I just needed to say it out loud. 3 days after the wedding, my father texted me, "Congratulations on your big day. Sorry we couldn't be there. Hope you and Marcus are very happy." That was it. No call. No follow-up. No explanation. A text. I didn't respond. For the next 3 weeks, nothing. No card. No gift. No voicemail. Not one word from my mother. Not one word from Renata, who lives 4 states away and whose complications had, apparently, resolved themselves enough that she and Derek went to Sedona for a long weekend the week after my wedding. I know this because she posted 17 photos. I didn't stop my $400 monthly payment to my parents. I'd been making it since 2016. They'd always called it helping out, which is what you call a payment when you don't want to acknowledge it's a payment. My father's hardware store had declined after my grandfather's partner bought him out. They'd downsized. There were real expenses. I made the payments because I believed that was what families did. I kept making the payment in November. I stopped sleeping well. Then, on a Wednesday morning in late November, I got an email from a woman named Carolyn Drake at an estate law firm in Dublin, Ohio. The subject line was, "Estate of Eleanor Calloway, required documentation." I almost deleted it. I get a lot of legal-looking spam. But the name Eleanor Calloway stopped me. Gran Eleanor. My grandmother who'd been dead for 21 years. I opened it. "Miss Calloway Walsh, my name is Carolyn Drake. I am a probate attorney handling a long-standing estate matter related to Eleanor Jean Calloway. We have recently become aware of a dormant custodial account established in your name in 2001 through a UTMA arrangement under Ohio law. A third-party audit triggered by an unrelated estate matter has flagged this account for review. I would appreciate the opportunity to speak with you at your earliest convenience." I read it 3 times. I called the number at the bottom. Carolyn Drake answered on the second ring. She was direct, organized, the kind of attorney who speaks in complete sentences and doesn't editorialize. "Ms. Walsh, thank you for calling. I'll be brief. Your grandmother established a UTMA custodial education account for you in October of 2001. The initial deposit was $250,000. By 2003, with investment returns, it had grown to approximately $280,000. Your father was named custodian." I said, I didn't know this existed. There was a pause. "I was afraid of that," she said. "How much is left?" I asked. She paused again. "That is what we are trying to determine," she said. "And why I need to speak with you in person." I drove to her office the next morning. I want to describe what it feels like to sit across from an attorney who is carefully explaining that your father may have spent your inheritance while you were taking out student loans. I want to describe it accurately because I think there's a tendency in these situations to reach for the dramatic, the tearful, the loud. It didn't feel loud. It felt like the ground under a foundation I'd been standing on for 36 years had been quietly eroding for decades, and someone was now handing me a soil report. Carolyn showed me the account records she'd obtained through the estate audit. The original account, $250,000, established October 14th, 2001. Beneficiary, Diane Marie Calloway. Custodian, Robert Allen Calloway. Then the withdrawals. August 2004, $12,000. Educational expense. January 2006, $18,000. Educational expense. I looked at the dates. August 2004. I was 16. Renata was 12. I said, "What was the educational expense in 2004? Carolyn looked at her notes. The notation on file says secondary education enrichment. But the audit flagged it because the timing aligns with enrollment records for a private secondary institution. Renata had attended Worthington Christian Academy from 7th grade onward. Tuition, $14,000 a year. I felt something very cold and very specific settle in my chest. "Show me all of them," I said. There were 11 withdrawals between 2004 and 2017. $144,000 removed from an account that bore my name. The notations on each one said educational expense or family educational support. The audit had cross-referenced them with actual expenditures. Every single one corresponded to a Renata expense: private school, college tuition, a study abroad semester in Edinburgh, graduate school application fees, a professional certification program. Not $1 had been used for me. I had taken out $95,000 in student loans. I had been making payments on those loans for 9 years. The original account had held $250,000. With investment growth between 2001 and 2004, before the withdrawals started, it had likely been worth closer to $280,000. After the withdrawals, by 2017, it held roughly $136,000. That balance had continued to grow in the market. As of the audit date, the account held $438,000. $438,000. I put both hands flat on the table. All of that is mine, I said. Legally, yes, said Carolyn. You are the named beneficiary. The custodian had a fiduciary obligation to use those funds exclusively for your educational benefit. The withdrawals for your sister constitute a clear breach of fiduciary duty under Ohio Revised Code 5814. What are my options? You can demand full accounting and restitution, she said, civilly. Or you can report to the Ohio Attorney General's office. Misappropriation of UTMA custodial funds can rise to the level of criminal fraud. I sat with that for a moment. I said, give me a few days. I drove home. I sat in my driveway for 12 minutes. I did not go inside immediately because I needed those 12 minutes to be alone with what I now knew before I said it out loud to another person. Then I went inside and I told Marcus. He listened to everything. The account, the withdrawals, the amounts, the dates, all of it. When I finished, he said, Diane, I know. This is theft. I know. $438,000. I know. He sat back. He looked at me the way he looks at his students when they finally cracked something they'd been struggling with for weeks, that particular kind of recognition. He said, What do you need from me right now? I said, I need you to not tell me to calm down, because I am calm. This is what I look like when I'm calm and I am furious. He said, I know. I can tell. It's honestly a little terrifying. What do you want to do? I said, I want to find out everything before I do anything. I want to understand the full picture before I move. He nodded. I want to know if my sister knew, I said. That one I can't tell you, he said. Me neither, I said. But I intend to find out. The next 6 days were methodical. I retained Carolyn Drake formally. I gave her authorization to request the full account history from the custodial institution. I contacted a forensic accountant named Philip Osei, whom Carolyn recommended, a compact, precise man in his late 40s who communicated exclusively in bullet points and had, apparently, testified in 17 fraud cases. Philip reviewed the withdrawal records. He cross-referenced them against publicly available education cost data for the institutions Renata had attended. His preliminary finding, of the $144,000 withdrawn, exactly $0 could be attributed to any educational expense for the named beneficiary. Every dollar was traceable to Renata's enrollment records, tuition invoices, or program fees. He also found something else. In 2017, after the last educational withdrawal, my father had moved the remaining balance, $136,000, into a new brokerage account. That account was in a joint name, Robert Allen Calloway and Carol Jean Calloway. My mother. Philip emailed me his findings on a Tuesday evening. His summary line read, Custodian transferred residual beneficiary funds to personal joint account. This constitutes conversion of trust property. I printed it. I put it in a folder. I labeled the folder with a piece of masking tape. I wrote one word on the tape. Evidence. I was in that folder by Thursday morning when my father walked into my office. I should describe my office. I work on the 4th floor of a mid-rise building off High Street. My desk faces a window. There's a small round conference table with 4 chairs near the door. My colleague Raphael keeps a plant on his windowsill that has somehow survived 2 years of inconsistent watering, and I find this deeply comforting. My assistant, Bryn, knocked on my door at 10:47 a.m. Diane, your dad is downstairs. He says it's about a family matter. I knew, of course. I'd been waiting for this since Tuesday. Send him up, I said. He came in wearing his good shoes, brown lace-ups, polished. He was carrying a manila envelope, rubber-banded, and he looked older than the last time I'd seen him, which had been Easter, 6 months ago. He'd lost some weight. His hands were very still, the way hands go still when they're working hard not to shake. Dad. Diane. He cleared his throat. Thanks for making time. What's this about? He sat down without being invited to. He put the envelope on the table. There's been some movement on your grandmother's estate, he said. A routine review. The attorney sent us some paperwork. Which attorney? He hesitated. Just an estate matter. Routine. Nothing to worry about. Which attorney, Dad? Carolyn Drake, he said. You might have heard from her too. I have. Something moved across his face. He couldn't tell what I knew. He was trying to read me, and I was giving him nothing, which is something I have gotten very good at over 36 years of practice. He pulled a document from the envelope and slid it across the table. It's just a release form, he said, for the estate to close properly. You acknowledge that the trust funds were administered correctly and release any further claims. I read it carefully. Every word. It was exactly what he'd said. A release. I, Nancy Calloway Walsh, acknowledged that the custodial education account established for my benefit was administered in accordance with its terms, and that all funds were appropriately dispersed for my educational benefit. I released the estate and the custodian from any further obligation. I looked up. You want me to sign this, I said. It's just a formality. The estate can't fully close without it. Dad, I kept my voice very level. I kept it the way you keep a measuring instrument level. Precisely, deliberately. Where did the money go? He blinked. What do you mean? Your education. Your grandmother left it for your education. I went to Ohio State on federal student loans. I graduated with $64,000 in debt. I did a graduate program at Case Western with another $31,000. I have been paying off student loans for 9 years. He was very still. We made decisions that we thought were best for the whole family, he said. Both of our daughters needed education. Your grandmother understood the value of education. Both girls benefited. My name was on the account. Both girls, Diane. We were doing what we thought was right. I slid the document back across the table without signing it. I said, I'm not signing this. His jaw tightened. Diane, you misappropriated funds from a custodial account that bore my name. Under Ohio law, that is a breach of fiduciary duty. Depending on how Carolyn Drake decides to characterize the transfer to your joint brokerage account in 2017, it may also be conversion of trust property. He stared at me. I said, I have retained Carolyn Drake. I have also retained a forensic accountant who has completed a full analysis of the withdrawal records. He said, very quietly, how long have you known? 6 days. He put his head in his hands. We needed the money, Diane. The store was struggling. Renata needed. I know what Renata needed, I said. Renata needed a private high school and a semester in Edinburgh and a graduate program. And I needed you to show up to my wedding. And I needed student loan debt not to follow me for a decade. And I needed a mother who called me more than once a month. But here we are, Dad. The room was very quiet. He left 20 minutes later. He forgot the manila envelope on the table. I added it to my folder. That was a Friday. On Monday, Carolyn Drake sent a formal demand letter to my parents. I want to read you what that letter said, not the legal language, the substance of it. It said, your daughter has documented evidence that you removed $144,000 from a custodial education account established for her sole benefit. You subsequently transferred the remaining balance of that account to a personal joint brokerage account in 2017. The current value of that account, inclusive of growth, is $438,000. You are demanded to provide full accounting within 14 days, cease any further movement of those funds, and respond to a request for restitution. Failure to respond will result in civil litigation and referral to the Ohio Attorney General's Financial Crimes Unit. The letter was sent certified mail and by email. Read receipt confirmed at 3:42 p.m. At 4:15 p.m., my mother called. I let it go to voicemail. She left a 4-minute message. I transcribed it because I wanted a record. Diane, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is not how families handle things. We are your parents. We raised you. We sacrificed for you. You had everything you needed. Your sister needed more support, and we gave it to her. That is what parents do. They assess what each child needs, and they give accordingly. You were always so independent. You always handled things yourself. We thought you were fine. We thought you didn't need it the way she did. And now you're sending lawyers after your own mother and father who love you and who are not young people and who do not deserve this. You call me back. I played it for Carolyn. She asked if she could keep a copy. I said yes. I also played it for Philip Osei, the forensic accountant. He listened to the whole thing, then said, she just confirmed the misallocation on a recorded message. She said they assessed what each child needed and gave accordingly. From a trust account with a single named beneficiary. That's an admission. I know, I said. You want me to add it to the file? I want you to add it to the file. My parents hired an attorney. His name was Gerald Marsh, a general practice lawyer out of Dublin who'd handled their real estate transactions for years. He was not a trust litigation specialist, and it showed. He called Carolyn on a Tuesday afternoon, and the conversation, which Carolyn relayed to me afterward, was essentially him suggesting that the matter could be resolved through a family conversation. Carolyn told him, my client has had approximately 36 years of family conversations. She'd like a settlement figure. He called back the next day. His clients were willing to discuss repayment of the original $144,000 in withdrawals, paid over 5 years. Carolyn called me. They offered the principal over 5 years, she said. I said, tell him no. I want the full current account value, $438,000. I want it because that money was invested in my name and it grew in my name and the growth belongs to me as surely as the principal. And I want my legal fees and I want the 9 years of student loan interest. Carolyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, that is a strong position. It's my money, I said. It is, she said. Let me make some calls. This is the part of the story where I want to tell you about my aunt. My father's younger sister is named Teresa Calloway Park. She is 61 years old, and she is a retired school principal, and she lives in a tidy house in Clintonville with her husband James and 2 rescue greyhounds named Franklin and Pierce. She and my father have never been particularly close, and for most of my childhood, she was more presence than participant, a Christmas card, an occasional phone call, a birthday check. But she had been Gran Eleanor's favorite. And on the Wednesday after the demand letter was sent, she called me. Diane, she said, your father called me. He told me what's happening. I waited. She said, I want you to know that your grandmother talked to me about that account. She talked to me when she set it up, and she talked to me the year before she died. She was very specific that it was for you. Not for the family, for you. She told me she was worried about how your mother treated you differently than Renata, and she wanted to make sure you had something that was yours that no one could take. She paused. I should have checked, she said quietly. I should have asked your father about it years ago, and I didn't. That's on me. Teresa, I said. Will you write that down? She said, I already called Carolyn Drake this morning. I have an appointment tomorrow. I had to put the phone down for a moment. When I picked it back up, I said, Gran Eleanor would have liked you for that. Teresa said she would have liked this whole thing, frankly. She was a fighter. Teresa gave Carolyn a formal affidavit. She described in detail the 2 conversations she'd had with Gran Eleanor about the account, including the explicit instruction that the money was for Diane and only for Diane, and that she hoped Robert would do right by his older daughter because she deserved someone doing right by her. Philip Osei provided a certified forensic accounting report. Carolyn filed a civil complaint in Franklin County Court of Common Pleas on a Thursday morning in January. The complaint alleged breach of fiduciary duty, conversion of trust property, and unjust enrichment. It sought $438,000 in restitution, plus $95,000 in documented student loan costs attributable to the unavailability of trust funds, plus legal fees. Total claimed over $590,000. Gerald Marsh called Carolyn that same afternoon. His tone had changed. My clients would like to discuss a full settlement, he said. They should have thought of that 3 weeks ago, said Carolyn. The mediation was scheduled for the last week of January. I want to tell you about the week before it, because that week matters. My mother called me 5 times. I let all of them go to voicemail. Renata called me twice. The first message was defensive. Diane, I didn't know about the trust. I want you to know that. Mom and Dad never told me where the money was coming from. I just thought they were saving well. The second message was harder to categorize. She said, I know this isn't my fault, but I know it also isn't nothing. I don't know what to do with that. I thought about that message for a long time. I thought about what it would mean to believe her. I thought about what it would mean not to. The truth was somewhere complicated in the middle, the way the truth usually is. Renata didn't steal from me, but she'd grown up in a house where the disparity was visible and she'd never asked the question. She'd accepted the furniture and the tuition and the trips and the attention, and she'd never once, not once, looked over her shoulder to see what I was doing without. I called her back on the 4th day. I believe you didn't know about the trust specifically, I said. Okay, she said. She sounded small. But you knew things were unequal, I said. You've always known. She was quiet. I don't want to hurt you, Renata. I want what was mine. I want you to understand that the way our parents treated us wasn't fair, and it wasn't your fault, and it also caused me real damage. Real, documented, financial, and emotional damage. And I am done absorbing it. She said, Are you done with me too? I don't know yet, I said honestly. I'll let you know when I know. The mediation was on a Tuesday. Conference room on the 3rd floor of a building on Broad Street. Carolyn on my left. Philip Osei on my right. My parents across the table with Gerald Marsh. My mother was wearing a blue cardigan. My father looked like he hadn't slept in 2 weeks, which I suspect was accurate. The mediator was a woman named Judge Elaine Forsyth, retired, who did civil mediation and had the particular quality of someone who has spent 30 years watching people be dishonest with themselves and is no longer impressed by it. She opened by saying, We are here because a fiduciary obligation was breached. The documentation is extensive and unambiguous. My role today is to help the parties reach a resolution that avoids a jury trial. Let's proceed. My father tried, at one point, to explain. He said something about family resources and both daughters and difficult times at the business. Judge Forsyth let him speak for exactly 90 seconds, and then she said, gently but with great finality, Mr. Calloway, the question of motive is for a jury. Today we are here to discuss numbers. After 3 hours of back and forth, Gerald Marsh put a number on the table. $360,000. Full settlement. Admits no liability. I looked at Carolyn. She looked at me. I slid a notepad across to her. I had written one word on it. No. She looked at it. Looked at me. Nodded. My client declined, she said. The account value is $438,000. We are not settling below that plus documented loan costs and fees. Total floor, $540,000. My mother made a sound. Not words. A sound. Gerald Marsh requested a break. They went into the hallway. They were out there for 22 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. When they came back, my father sat down and he looked at me directly for the first time since the mediation had started. He said, $438,000. No admission of liability. Carolyn said, full account value plus Diane's legal fees, which are documented at $4,200. Written acknowledgement in the settlement that the funds were improperly directed. No criminal referral. He looked at Gerald Marsh. Gerald Marsh nodded almost imperceptibly. My father said, agreed. My mother stared at the table. To fund the settlement, they liquidated the brokerage account that had held my inheritance for 7 years. The account that my father had moved my money into, that he and my mother had watched grow, that they had perhaps believed, over time, had simply become theirs. $442,200 arrived in my attorney's escrow account on February 7th. Carolyn called me when the wire cleared. She said, "It's there." I was in my car in the parking garage outside my office. I had been expecting this call all morning. I had my coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, and when she said it's there, I just said, "Okay." "Thank you." She said, "Are you all right?" I thought about it. I said, "I think I am." I paid off my student loans that afternoon. $95,000 in total remaining debt, cleared in a single transaction. I had been paying them since 2015. Monthly payment, $720. 9 years. I had never once been late. The loan servicer sent an automated email. "Congratulations. Your loan balance is 0. I printed it. I put it in the folder. I wrote on the masking tape above the word evidence and freedom. Marcus and I sat on our back porch that night. It was cold, February cold in Columbus, which is the kind of cold that has intentions. We had blankets and coffee, and the neighbor's dog was barking at something in the dark. He said, "How does it feel?" I thought about the right word for a long time. "It feels like something was mine all along, and I just got it back," I said. But I also had to fight for it, which means I had to know it was worth fighting for. And that part took me a really long time. He put his arm around me. "Gran Eleanor knew," I said. "She tried to protect me, and they went around her, and she wasn't here to stop them, and I didn't know for 21 years. But she knew. She knew it was unequal. She knew I was the one who would need something that was specifically mine." "She was right," he said. "She was right." I'm going to tell you what happened next because it matters and because I want to be honest about the parts that are not simple. My parents moved to a smaller house. They had to. The brokerage account was most of their liquid assets. They still have Social Security and a modest 401k, and my father still does some consulting for the hardware industry. They are not destitute. I want to be clear about that. They are not suffering in a way that is disproportionate to their choices. I have not spoken to my mother since the mediation. My father sent me a card in March. No return address. Inside it said, "I'm sorry I didn't do right by you. I don't expect forgiveness. I hope you are well." I read it 3 times. I put it in a drawer. I'm not sure yet what to do with it. Renata and I have talked 4 times since January. Real conversations, the kind we probably should have been having for decades. She told me things I didn't know, things about feeling the pressure of being the favored child, the way it created its own cage, the expectations it built. I told her things I'd never said to her directly, things about what it felt like to be the one who was always almost enough. We are not okay. We are also not done. I think that's probably the honest place to land for now. In March, I established a scholarship, the Eleanor Callaway Engineering Award, administered through the Ohio State University College of Engineering. $25,000 annually, targeted to first-generation college students pursuing engineering degrees. Students who are funding their own education. Students who are, as Gran Eleanor's letter to me once said, building their futures without a net. I found that letter, by the way. Carolyn Drake had located it in the estate file. It had been written in 2001, the year Gran Eleanor set up the account. It was addressed to me. It said, "My dear Diane, you are 11 years old and already you remind me of myself, which is to say you are capable of more than anyone around you seems to understand. I have put away some money for your education. I want you to go to college without owing anyone anything, especially not your parents, because I know your mother and I know your father and I love them both, and I also know that neither of them fully sees what they have in you. This money is yours, not the family's. Yours. I am trusting your father with it because I have to, but I want you to know it exists. And if it is ever not where it should be, I want you to ask the hard questions. You deserve the hard answers. I believe in your extraordinary future. All my love, Gran Eleanor." I read it at Carolyn's desk. I read it twice. Then I folded it very carefully, and I put it in my coat pocket, and I carried it home, and I put it in the box where I keep the things that matter most. 1 year later, I am sitting at the desk in the second bedroom that we've turned into a home office. It's a Sunday. Marcus is making breakfast downstairs, and I can smell coffee and something that might be an ambitious attempt at Eggs Benedict. Outside our window, the maple tree has started to bud. In 3 weeks, we're going to plant a vegetable garden in the back, tomatoes and basil, and one extremely optimistic attempt at bell peppers. I paid off our car loan in March. I maxed out our retirement contributions for the year. I booked us a trip to Portugal in September. I told Marcus that for the first time in my adult life, I am planning for a future instead of recovering from a past. He said, "Welcome to your life." I said, "I think I'm going to like it here." The first Eleanor Callaway Scholarship was awarded in April to a young woman named Priya Anand, 20, second year, structural engineering track, working 30 hours a week at a grocery distribution warehouse to cover her living costs. I met her in the dean's conference room. She was very poised and very tired in the way that comes from doing too many things at once for too long. I told her about the account. I told her about what my grandmother tried to do and what my parents did instead. I told her that the scholarship existed because someone saw me before I saw myself and I wanted to do the same for someone else. She said, "I'll make her proud." "I think you already are," I said. Here's what I know now that I wish someone had told me at 22, carrying that first loan disbursement letter back to my apartment. Independence is not the same as not needing anything. It just means you learn to meet your own needs when other people failed to. That's a skill. It's a real and hard-won skill. But it is not evidence that you didn't deserve more. It is not evidence that you should have been given less. It is not evidence that the empty seats were something you should have learned to live around. You are allowed to name what was taken from you. You are allowed to ask for it back legally, properly, with documentation and a good attorney and a forensic accountant who communicates in bullet points. You are allowed to build the scholarship and plant the garden and go to Portugal and love the man who cried at your vows. You are allowed to choose yourself. Gran Eleanor chose me when she was alive. When she died, my parents made a different choice. And when I found out, I made the only choice that honored what she started. I chose me too. If you're watching this and you're the one whose name was on the account, the one who keeps making the payment, the one who watched 2 seats stay empty in the front row, I want you to hear me say this. You were never the rounding error. You were the whole number. And it is never too late to prove it.